All right, so we've talked about the different types of data in JavaScript, primitive types, reference types. Now what we want to do is look at type conversion. So basically taking a variable and changing the data type. And you're going to run into cases where you're going to want to do this. For example, if you're taking input from a form and you're putting that into a variable, that's going to be a string by default. And then if you want to apply calculations to it, you're going to want to parse it. You're going to want to change it into a number type. So there's a couple different ways to do each type of conversion, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Now I'm going to make this easier by just creating one variable and to go through all these instead of creating all these different variables like we did in the last one. So we're just going to define or declare this val using let. Okay, make sure you use let because we didn't assign a value, so if you use const you're going to get an error. So first thing I want to show you is number to string. So first of all I'm going to set val equal to a number. And then down here, we're going to output a couple things. Okay, so first is going to be the actual value. Next is going to be the type. So we'll use type of. And then I'm going to do console.log, and I'm going to take that value, and I'm going to call the .length property. Okay, now length only works on strings because it's a string method, it's a string property. It gives you the number of characters in a string. So let's go ahead and save this and run it and see what we get. So first thing we get is 5, which is the value. That's fine. Number is the type, and then val.length gives us undefined because we're trying to get length from a number, which doesn't work. So if we want to convert this into a string, what we can do is wrap it in the string function, okay, capital S string. So if I go ahead and save this and run it, now you'll see that 5 it's not blue anymore, it's black, representing a string. The type of gives us string, and then it gives us 1 for the length. So if we were to put 555, then we'll get 3 for the length. So that's how we can convert a number to a string. We can also do, and I'm just going to keep using val here, whenever I put a new val, it's going to overwrite the one before it. So let's go ahead and do string around an expression. So we'll say 4 plus 4 and save, and you'll see that we'll get 8 for the value, the type of is string, and then we get 1 for the length, okay, because it's obviously 8. So that's converting a number to a string. Let's convert a Boolean to a string. So we'll say val equals string bool, true. So if we save that, you can see that we get true as a string, and we get 4 from the length. Let's do a date to a string. Okay, so we can say val equals, and we'll do new date. Save that, and it gives us this. This is now a string, it's not a date object. You can see right here, and it gives us 57 because it counts everything that's here as a character. Okay, and then let's do an array. So we'll say array to string. So we'll just put in some numbers here and save, and it actually gives us 1, 2, 3, 4 separated by commas as a string. It gives us 7 as the length. Now, in addition to the string function, we also have the toString method. So for instance, we can say val equals, and we'll say 5 dot toString. Okay, we can also do that. So if we save that, we get 5 as a string. If we wanted to do a Boolean, we'll say true dot toString, and we get true as a string. So you can use this, or you can use this. So now let's take a look at turning strings to numbers. So just like we have the string function, we have the number function. So I'm going to say val equals, and let's set this to let's see, we'll set it to a string of 5. And if I save that, this is all going to work. Now if I turn it to a number, actually, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out the length, which is a property that only works on strings, and I'm going to change it to a method that only works on numbers. So we'll say console.log, let's say val.toFixed. ToFixed just, it allows us to specify decimals. For instance, if we wanted our number to have 2 decimals, we could put 2. If we leave it blank, it'll just be no decimals. But the point is it only works on numbers. So let's save, and you'll see we're going to get this error because we actually have a string here and we're calling ToFixed. So what I'm going to do is wrap this in number and save, and now you'll see that we get 5 as a number, type of gives us number, and ToFixed gives us 5. If I were to put a 2 in here and save, we'll get 2 decimal points, but that's besides the point. I just want to show you that this is actually a number. So let's try to set a Boolean to a number and see what happens. So if we say number true, that's actually going to give us a 1. Okay, if we parse a true value as a number, it gives us 1. And on the other hand, I'm sure you can guess, if we try to parse a false as a number, that gives us 0. And I bet you can guess what null will give us. We say null. Oops. I can't type. So null also gives us 0. Now, what if we do... What if we do hello? What on earth is that going to give us as a number? Let's save, and it gives us this NaN. Okay, so NaN is an actual value that stands for not a number. Okay, so this is what happens when a value tries to get parsed as a number but can't. The same thing will happen if we do, let's say we do an array. So we do that, save that, that's also going to give us not a number. So it's a special value type, or not type, but an actual value in JavaScript. Okay, now just like with string, there's additional ways to do this. So we have a method called parseInt. Actually, I'm just going to say val equals parseInt, and we'll pass in here 100. Okay, 100 as a string. So if we save that, you can see now we get 100 as a number. Now, if I go ahead and I try to add some decimal points here, let's say 100.30, and save, notice that I'm still getting 100 because parseInt is just that. It's going to parse it as an integer. If we want to add decimals, then we want to use something called parseFloat. So we're going to say parseFloat 100.30. Whoop, should be a string or a number. Yeah, 100.30, and save, and we're getting 100.3. Okay, by default it's going to give you just 1 decimal. Well, if we do 31, obviously that will give us 31, but if it's a 0, it'll just give us 1. But we're using ToFixed down here, so if we want to put 2 in here and save, it'll actually give us 100.30. Okay, so just remember, if you want to use decimals, you want to use this parseFloat. Okay, so that is type conversion. Now we also have something called type coercion, which is basically when we do the same thing. We take one type and change it to another, but we don't actually do it. JavaScript does it for us. So if we try to add together, let's say we'll do val, let's do const val1 equals 5, const val2 equals 6, and then we'll do const sum equals val1 plus val2. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and we'll console.log the sum, and let's console.log, whoops, the type. So if we save that, I'm just going to comment all this stuff out. So if we save that, we get 11, obviously. They're both numbers. They're being added as numbers. But what if we were to change one of these to a string? All right, so we can either put quotes around it, or we can do string like that. Whoops, and turn it into a string. So let's save that and see what we get. So we get 56. So what happened here is the JavaScript engine saw that we have two values that we're adding together. One is a string, one is a number, and it took it upon itself to change one to a string and add it. Okay, it actually changed the 6 to a string and then basically concatenated it, put one in front of the other, so made it 56. So that's an example of type coercion, and there's a lot of different cases where this happens, but this is just one of them. And this 56 is a string. Okay, now what we could do if we wanted that 56 to be a number is we could run it through, well, we could use parseInt, or we could use number like that, and then save, and then we get 56 as a number. All right, so in the next video we're going to look at more with numbers, and we're going to take a look at the math object. When you deal with JavaScript, a lot of times you deal with calculations and math, so there's an object that can help us do things like round numbers, get square roots, things like that. So we're going to do that in the next video.